A Friday night pulsed with life at the Rusty Anchor Tavern in Boise, Idaho, where neon signs cast jagged red and blue shadows across the crowded room, syncing with the gritty wail of electric guitars. The air was thick with the scent of spilled whiskey and cedar, the bar packed with young Marines fresh from a grueling week at base, their voices a chaotic symphony of boasts and clinking mugs. In a shadowed nook by the jukebox, a woman sat alone, her fingers curled around a glass of dark ale. Her sleeve was pushed back, revealing a stark tattoo, a string of numbers, 1904K312, etched beside a jagged crescent moon. Was it just ink, or did it hide a story potent enough to hush even the rowdiest of soldiers? Let's dive into the mystery. The tavern's amber glow flickered over weathered wooden tables where Marines huddled, their glasses frosted with condensation, foam sliding down like melting snow. Their laughter cut through the air, sharp as a bayonet, as they traded tales of marksmanship and digital conquests on flickering arcade screens. "Got that target clean, right through the chest," one bragged, his voice rough with pride, a cigarette dangling from his lips. Another leaned back, smirking. "Wait till some grizzled vet stumbles in, flashing their ink like a badge. Bet they'll fold before the night's out." His words sliced through the din, drawing chuckles from the group. Their eyes landed on Mara, a woman in her early 30s, her frame wiry but unbowed, carrying the faint stoop of old injuries. Her dark hair, streaked with premature silver, fell loosely over one shoulder, and her denim jacket was rolled up to show the tattoo on her forearm. The numbers, 1904K312, glowed faintly under the tavern's dim lights, the crescent moon beside them sharp as a blade's edge. No explanation, just the stark ink. For a moment the room's roar softened, but only briefly. A burly Marine slammed his mug down, grinning. "What's that, your locker code? Looks tough, I'll give you that." His tone dripped with mockery, sparking a wave of snickers that pushed Mara into a quiet spotlight, caught between amusement and disdain. They tossed out guesses, each one sharper than the last. "Secret code for a speakeasy?" one jeered. "Maybe it's her dog's birthday," another crowed, the table erupting in laughter. Each jab was a pebble flung into the still pool of Mara's silence. Yet, in a corner cloaked in shadow, three figures watched, their eyes fixed not on the jeers, but on Mara's unshaken calm. They were special forces operatives, their faces lined with the scars of covert missions, jungle ambushes, desert raids, moments no barroom boast could capture. Their gazes locked on the tattoo. 1904K312, not random, not trivial, a cipher from a hidden war. The operatives exchanged glances, wordless but heavy with understanding. Behind Mara's steady gaze lay a story they recognized, one of grit and sacrifice. She sat motionless, her hazel eyes scanning the young faces, lingering on the loudest Marine's smirk. Her heartbeat quickened, then steadied, her lips curving into a faint, serene smile. No defense, no argument. Just patience, waiting for the moment to let her truth unfold. The tavern's noise surged back, glasses clinking, guitars screaming, but the air around Mara felt different, charged with an unspoken weight. The door swung open, a gust of night air carrying the tang of diesel and rain-soaked asphalt. The Marines roared on, but in that fleeting pause, Mara's stillness seemed to anchor the room. Her breath was slow, deliberate, as strands of silver hair caught the light. The loudmouth leaned forward, pointing at the crescent moon. "That's just for show, right? Some artsy nonsense." His hand hovered, daring to reach for her arm. Before his fingers could graze her skin, the three operatives' gazes sharpened, their presence a silent command. He froze, hand retreating, his grin faltering. "Just messing around," he muttered, the words flat, deflated. Mara felt the warmth of their unseen protection, a quiet alliance. The operatives said nothing, but their chairs shifted slightly, angling toward her. a vow without words. If trouble stirred, they'd be her shield. The tavern roared back to life, but Mara remained a still point, her shoulders squared, her hands steady. She met the loudmouth's gaze, her eyes carrying a quiet sorrow laced with unbreakable resolve. That faint smile returned, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The young Marine sensed it now. Those numbers weren't random. They were a testament, a fragment of a life forged in fire. The Rusty Anchor Tavern thrummed with raw energy, the neon glow pulsing like a heartbeat against the scuffed oak walls. The jukebox churned out a heavy bass line, each note weaving through the haze of cigarette smoke and the sharp scent of spilled bourbon. Mara sat at her corner table, her fingers tracing the rim of her ale glass, the tattoo on her forearm, 1904K 312, flanked by a jagged crescent moon, catching flickers of light. The young Marines at the center table continued their raucous banter, their voices a jagged chorus of bravado, but their earlier mockery of Mara's ink had lost its edge, dulled by the weight of her quiet presence. Across the room, the three Special Forces operatives, Major Elias Vaughn, Captain Nora Cade, and Lieutenant Jonas Reed, sat in a shadowed booth, their eyes never straying far from Mara. Their faces, etched with the wear of countless missions, held no trace of the tavern's carefree revelry. Elias, his jaw tight beneath a salt and pepper beard, leaned forward, his voice a low murmur. 1904, that's the 13 Kandahar strike. His words were barely audible, but they carried the weight of recognition. Nora's eyes narrowed, her fingers tightening around her water glass. K-312, the covert outpost in Helmand. Operation Silent Fang. Jonas nodded, his scarred knuckles pale against the dark bottle in his hand. They knew the code wasn't just ink. It was a ledger of blood, sweat, and unspoken valor. The Marines at the main table, oblivious to the operatives' hushed exchange, tossed out more half-hearted jabs. "Bet it's her old unit's call sign," one snorted, his voice slurred with bravado and beer. "Or maybe her lucky lottery numbers." The laughter was thinner now, less certain, as if they sensed the ground shifting beneath them. Mara's gaze remained steady, her hazel eyes catching the dim light like polished stone. She didn't flinch, didn't rise to their bait. Her silence was a shield, forged in moments the young soldiers could only imagine. Nights of gunfire tearing through desert air, the weight of decisions made in a heartbeat, the faces of comrades lost to the sand. Elias's hand twitched, his instinct to intervene simmering beneath his calm exterior. He'd seen too many battles, too many sacrifices, to let Mara's quiet strength be trampled by ignorance. Nora, her dark braid falling over one shoulder, caught his glance and shook her head slightly. "She's got this," she whispered, her voice firm but soft. Jonas leaned back, his eyes flicking to the loudest Marine, a young man with a buzzcut and a cocky grin. The operative's stare was a warning, unspoken but unmistakable, and the Marine's hand faltered mid-gesture, his mug clattering softly against the table. Mara exhaled, her breath steady, the faintest tremor in her fingers betraying the memories stirring within. In her mind, the tavern faded, replaced by the acrid burn of gunpowder, the roar of a chopper cutting through a starless night. 1904K 312. The numbers were more than a code. They were a vow. 19. The day her team breached a fortified compound under a blood-red dawn. 04. The month when trust was all that stood between life and death. K-312. The designation of a mission that left scars deeper than skin. She saw a friend fall, his breath fading in the dust, and a child's terrified eyes peering from a crumbling doorway. Each digit was a pulse, a moment she carried in her bones. The tavern's noise swelled again, the jukebox kicking into a new riff, but the air around Mara's table felt heavier, charged with an unseen current. The loudmouth Marine leaned forward, his voice softer now, almost hesitant. "That crescent's gotta mean something, right? Like a squad emblem or something?" His tone was less mocking, tinged with curiosity, but still far from respect. Before Mara could respond, Elias shifted in his seat, his broad shoulders casting a shadow across the room. His presence alone was enough to make the Marine lean back, his bravado shrinking under the operative's steady gaze. Mara's lips curved into a faint smile, not of triumph, but of quiet endurance. She let her sleeve fall, the tattoo vanishing briefly under the fabric before reappearing as she shifted her arm. The crescent moon seemed to glow, a silent beacon of her past. She didn't need to speak. Her stillness told the story. The operatives understood, their silence a mirror of her own. They knew the weight of missions that never made headlines, of sacrifices buried in classified reports. Their respect was a quiet tide, swelling in the dim light, unspoken but palpable. The door creaked open again, a cold draft sweeping in, carrying the scent of wet pavement and distant pine. The Marines' laughter faltered, their eyes darting to Mara, then to the operatives, sensing the shift in the room's pulse. Mara drew a slow breath, the taste of malt and tobacco grounding her. She met the loudmouth's gaze, her eyes steady, carrying a sorrow that didn't bend. The tavern's chaos resumed, but the operative's quiet vigilance remained, a shield woven from shared understanding. Mara was no stranger to battle, and tonight, her silence was her strongest weapon. The Rusty Anchor Tavern pulsed under the weight of its own noise, the jukebox's raw chords clawing through the haze of cigarette smoke and sour whiskey. Neon lights sputtered, casting jagged pools of red and gold across the worn oak tables, where young Marines traded boasts like grenades, their laughter sharp and fleeting. Mara sat alone in her corner, her ale glass sweating in her grip, the tattoo on her forearm, 1904K312, etched beside a stark crescent moon, gleaming faintly under the flickering glow. The room's chaos seemed to part around her, her silence a steady anchor amid the storm of bravado. The three Special Forces operatives, Major Elias Vaughn, Captain Nora Cade, and Lieutenant Jonas Reed, remained in their shadowed booth, their eyes locked on Mara with a reverence that needed no words. Elias's weathered hands tightened around his glass, his voice a low rumble. "Silent Fang," he murmured, the name a ghost from a classified past. "She was there, in the thick of it!" Nora's gaze hardened, her fingers tracing the edge of her table, her voice barely above a whisper. "Led the breach, saved the hostages, and burned their weapons cache to ash. That's no small thing." Jonas's nod was slow, his scarred face unreadable, but his eyes burned with recognition. The tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a map of a night that changed the course of a covert war. At the main table, the Marines' jeers had softened, their earlier mockery now a hesitant murmur. "Bet it's just some random code," one muttered, his voice lacking conviction, his eyes darting to Mara's unflinching calm. Another leaned forward, his buzz cut catching the light. "That crescent's gotta be a unit patch, right? Looks too sharp for nothing." Their words were probes, testing the edges of a truth they couldn't grasp. Mara's hazel eyes met theirs, steady and unyielding, carrying the weight of memories too heavy for the tavern's raucous air. She saw the desert again, sand stinging her face, the crack of gunfire, the weight of a rifle in her hands as she led her team through a fortress of shadows. Elias's jaw clenched, his instinct to defend Mara simmering beneath his calm. He'd seen too many heroes dismissed, their sacrifices buried under careless words. Nora's hand brushed his arm, a subtle signal to hold back. "Let her handle it," she whispered, her voice steady as steel. Jonas's gaze flicked to the loudest Marine, whose hand hovered over his mug, his earlier smirk gone. The operative's stare was a silent command, and the Marine's hand dropped, his bravado crumbling like dry sand. Mara's breath was slow, deliberate, the scent of malt and pine grounding her. In her mind, the tattoo burned. 1904K312. 19, the day her team stormed a compound under a blood-red dawn. 04, the month of relentless preparation, every second a gamble. K312, the code for a mission that left her with scars no one could see. She saw a comrade's eyes, wide with fear, then still. She heard the scream of a child caught in the crossfire, her own voice barking orders through the chaos. Each number was a vow, a piece of her soul inked into her skin. The tavern's rhythm faltered as the jukebox cut to a slower riff, the air thick with unspoken tension. The loudmouth Marine shifted, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Okay, but what's it mean? You're not just wearing that for kicks, are you?" His question hung, fragile, in the smoky air. Before Mara could answer, Elias stood, his broad frame casting a shadow across the room. His presence was enough to silence the table, the Marine's eyes widening as they sensed the weight of his authority. Nora and Jonas rose beside him, their movements deliberate, forming a quiet barrier around Mara. The room stilled, glasses poised midair, laughter caught in throats. Mara drew a deep breath, her chest rising as if to expel the weight of their ignorance. Her silence was a force, carrying the echoes of desert nights, of choices made in the blink of an eye. Elias stepped forward, his voice low but clear, cutting through the hush. That code, she was Delta, led the assault in Silent Fang. The words landed like a grenade, the tavern's noise collapsing into silence. The Marines' faces paled, their mugs trembling in their hands. Mara's heart thudded, but her gaze remained steady, a faint scar on her temple catching the light. Nora spoke next, her voice calm but resonant. Kandahar, 13. She took down a terror network, saved lives, and walked away with nothing but that ink. The Marine's eyes darted to the tattoo, no longer a joke, but a sacred emblem. The crescent moon gleamed, a silent testament to a mission only a few could understand. One Marine, his voice hoarse, whispered, "I didn't know. I'm sorry." His words broke the silence, a crack in their earlier arrogance. Mara's lips curved into a gentle smile, not of victory but of forgiveness. She nodded, accepting their remorse, feeling the warmth of Elias's hand on her shoulder. The operatives stepped back, their duty done, not just shielding Mara but awakening a truth the Marines hadn't seen. The tavern stirred back to life, the jukebox kicking in, but the air had shifted. The Marines' laughter was quieter now, their glances at Mara tinged with regret and awe. She brushed her fingers over the tattoo, tracing the crescent's edge, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. The numbers were her story,